Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and in this video we're going to talk about while loops. We're going to discuss what looping is and what a while loop does, and we're going to talk about how to implement them into our programs. So what if we wanted to create a section of our program that will keep the user from moving on until a specific condition is met? Well, that's what loops allow us to do. So let's take a look at this specific loop here, right? So with this example, we have an integer variable named num, and it's set to be equal to 0, right? So num is equal to 0. Then we have a while loop. So we know it's a while loop because it has this keyword while. And then inside the parentheses, we give it an argument, some kind of condition that it needs to evaluate to determine if it's true or false. So while num is less than 5, we'll continue to run this loop. All right. So it's important that this condition makes logical sense. So while num is less than 5, the condition needs to either equate to true or false. Remember when we did conditionals last term, we had to set up those conditions based on the same criteria. So while num is less than 5, then we are going to run the code in between these brackets here. So we're going to output the value of num onto the screen, console.writeLine num, and then we are going to do num++. And if you think back to our operations lesson last term, you may remember that if we put a plus after a variable, that essentially means increase it by 1. So every iteration of this loop, we're going to increase the value of num by 1. So the first time we run this loop, it's going to be 0, and then we add 1 to it. So the next time we run the loop, it's going to be 1. 1 is still less than 5, so we will still run this code. And then the next time it'll be 2, the next time it'll be 3, the next time it'll be 4, and then the next time it'll be 5. Now 5 is not less than 5, so we will not run this code on the 5th time, right? So this is going to output the numbers 0 through 4 on the screen. So it'll output 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's actually go ahead and build this loop. I'm going to open up a replet. I'm going to go to REPL and open a new REPL. Let's do a new REPL, and I'm going to open a C# REPL. Let's call this while loop practice. Sure, why not? All right, let me increase my font size here so you can see what I'm doing. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to fix my brackets because I want to be able to see it properly. Okay, so in that program, we had an integer variable called num, and we set that variable equal to 0. And then we created a while loop, so while num is less than 5, we are going to basically console.writeLine, we'll just output the value of num, and then we will num++. So now when we run this program, we should see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's give it a shot. All right, and there we go, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, we can change the way this thing operates, and we can add as much code as we want in here. We can have different variables. We can compare num to another variable if we'd like. There are all kinds of ways that we can modify this and make it work, make it different. Just remember, with a while loop, we check before we run the code. So we check first, and then we run the code if the condition is met. Now, let me ask you a question. What would happen if I got rid of the num++? Think logically about what you think will happen if I got rid of that statement. Let's step through it. So num equals 0 up here, right? Num equals 0. Then we get into our while loop, 0 less than 5. We output the value of num, which is 0. Then we loop back up. Notice that we haven't changed the value of num. It's going to stay 0 forever. So this is constantly going to output 0 to my screen. This is what we call an infinite loop. Infinite loops are dangerous, right? You do not want an infinite loop in your program because you're just going to keep running the same thing over and over again. It's just going to keep using up resources that your computer needs to dedicate to running this program. Whenever you're creating a loop, always have some way for your loop to break out. Always have some way for this condition to be met. Okay? So let me go ahead and run this and I'll show you what it looks like, even if it'll even run. So now look, it's just continually adding zeros. It's just going to keep going forever until I tell it to stop. Look at all the zeros it added over and over and over again, because there's no way for me to break out of this loop. Infinite loops are bad. Make sure you always have some way to break out. Now, let's say I did num minus minus. Well, that reduces num by 1. Is this an infinite loop? Well, I've added in a way to change num, but we're going in the wrong direction. Instead of changing num so that it gets closer to the condition being met, we're actually going to be moving farther away. Watch what happens when I run this program. So we can see very quickly how fast our programs run. Just in those couple of seconds, we got up to 53,307 iterations of this loop. We just let it run for a couple of seconds and it went kind of crazy, right? Notice that it'll go forever until I tell it to stop. That's because we're going away from 5. Not toward 5, we're going away from 5. Here's another way that you might, I don't know, accidentally create an infinite loop. Let's say you know what? I think that's totally fine, because the other scenarios I was going to bring up are so ridiculous, so crazy, so insane, we'll never get to them. I think this is good enough for now. I think you understand the concept of while loops. Make sure that you logically think through the conditions you're writing for your loop to ensure that there is a way to break out of that loop. And yeah, have fun with this concept. We're going to use it a ton in the next couple of weeks.